In this lesson, we're going to talk about loading a collection of data from the server and showing the elements of that collection on your page. We're going to use the JSON format for that. So the information we're going to load from the server could be coming from your server-side application. You could be using PHP, MySQL, or you could be using Node.js or any server-side solution that you want. Or you could also be loading a static JSON file, which is going to be our case now. In order for you to run these examples, you need to have either a local web server like Apache or access to a remote server, because if you just double click on the HTML file, it's not going to be able to access this information. Alright, so we have this file destinations.json, which is the file we'll be reading from AJAX, and this is a collection of destinations. We're going to create our project here is going to be some sort of a travel agency or tourism site website where you're going to have these nice little boxes for each one of the destinations. So each one of the destinations has a unique ID, a name, description, and more info, which will slide down if I click here. That's not implemented yet, but it will be, and an image and a price. The add to cart and the total amount of the purchase, we're not working with that at the moment. So let's look at our HTML file. We have our body, then there's the header area, which is this black area here, and then I created a sample box so that you can look at the HTML with more detail, and you can go to a CSS file as well and dig a bit deeper into it if you want. But basically this will be showing this shows all of the information that's contained in an entry. So let's begin by loading the JSON data from the server using AJAX. The file that we're accessing is called destinations.json, and I want to add some parameters in here. The first parameter I want to add is the data type, which is going to be of JSON. Sometimes jQuery identifies this without you telling it to, but some other times it doesn't. It's supposed to be an intelligent guess, but I prefer to just specifying as JSON. The content type, this is something that we're going to tell the server, is of a JSON type. So this is not necessarily, you don't need to do this each time, but it depends on you if your server needs to be told exact type of content that you're requesting. So I'll just leave it there. This will give us, so when this is completed, right, we have the done promise. When that's completed, we get a response, and I want to show that in the console area. And I want to close this as well. So I'm reloading the page, and we got that in response. We got the three objects that we requested from the server. One extra thing. So what we're doing here, we're not specifying the type of request. So if we don't specify a type of request, jQuery defaults to a GET request. So this is a GET request, which are used to ask for information to the server. It's a read-only query. Now, what could happen to you, and it's happened to me in some projects, and that's why I'm going to tell you what comes next, because it's not something that you'll find in every tutorial or in every example, but you might run into this issue, and it's a pain when it happens. So sometimes your browser thinks that this content is static when it's not really static. So in my case, I'm calling a file, but my browser doesn't know if this is a file or if this file is static or if it was dynamically generated. And sometimes web browsers will keep these responses in their cache. Not just a web browser, but it could also happen in mobile apps. It happened to me in a game actually. So what I think it's a good thing to add here is it's another parameter called cache false, which will force each request to be unique so that there's no caching happening. So let me just show you before I reload the page. Let's go to the network tab in here and see what's going on. So we are calling destination.json. That's a request that you can see here. If I click on it, it's going to show you the URL that we are using. so it ends in destinations.json. The response that we get is this, the objects that we already showed in the console. So you don't really need to show this in the console. You can always just look it up here. So basically, imagine that this came from the database, and then there were changes in the database, and you're calling this again, and the browser thinks that this hasn't changed, so it's caged the result. One way to force not caching is to have a different URL each time, because then there's no caching. The browser will look back and will say, "Oh no, I don't know that URL, so I don't have a cache for it." And you can add that you can do that by adding a timestamp in here, so that since you can't go back in time, there's never going to be two requests that are the same. What cache does, it does exactly that. So let me reload the page and show you. It adds a timestamp to the URL. So that basically means there's no caching. That there will not be any caching going on.